Welcome to Hokyoji Sunday Talk. This morning we've got Reverend Jushin Butcher with us. Hold on a second. I'm going to pin him so you can see him. There we go. So we know Jushin pretty well, but just a reminder that he started studying Buddhism in 1997 in Tibet, eventually became a student of Dokai's. He lives in Maryland with his husband, his dog, his chickens, and a bunch of other people. Well, or at least animals and creatures. I'll put it that way. He's works in artificial intelligence. He teaches, so he's a very active fellow. He's our current treasurer, and oftentimes is an Eno for our own offerings. So this morning, please welcome Jushin and take it away. I'm not hearing you. Can everybody else hear Jushin? If you can hear Jushin, raise your hand. I can't.
The symbol says he's muted. Are you not muted?
Maybe I'm muted. I just forget. I always forget.
Oh,
All right.
that's encouraging. Jushin even has this.
I know.
It's way.
You maybe.
All these moving
Wow.
pieces.
He gets the admonition. You're muted. Okay, I'll shut up.
Good morning. Thank you. I started off with my office is being remodeled, but not to look like the Zendel. So it's a little fumey in here. Can you hear the fan? Not hear the fan?
I'm not hearing a fan.
Oh, good. Okay.
I didn't know you were at Hokyoji. Are you at this?
Yeah, I know. I know, right? It's magic.
Yeah, really. Okay.
It's magic. Yeah, no, my office is a lot messier than this, so that's why I picked the Hokyoji picture this morning. Thank you. It's always wonderful to see everybody. So there was a book originally I wrote there was a book a few years ago, and then I realized that, well, it was probably a few decades ago. And there was a book called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Would anyone like to hazard a guess as to when that book was actually published? 1986, almost 4 decades ago. So yeah, time flies when you're having fun, that's for sure. So my version today is All I Really Need to Know I Learned During Oryoki. So I have very fond memories of Oryoki. And I actually always would get very emotional at the last Oryoki meal of a retreat, because there's probably a lot bound up for the fact that you knew the retreat was ending, and you knew sesshin was ending, but I also the next day we were going to go back to plates, knives, and forks. And I just really always liked Oryoki. I sometimes sit about once a quarter, not since the pandemic. I hope to start again. Maybe in 2023, I would sit 3-day sessions with a white plum group out here on the East Coast. And we never practice Oryoki. I don't know why. I imagine it's because of the places we stay. We tend to sort of stay at conference centers. So at meal times, we all line up at the buffet. We fill our plates and we take a seat in the dining room, and everybody leaves when they're done. And it just doesn't feel the same. It feels like having this sesshin at the Holiday Inn. So I always really liked Oryoki. So Oryoki is variously translated as just enough or just the right amount. If we look at the three characters, the first one actually means agreement. Well, actually is not the right word. Like all words, I think like run, if you look in the dictionary, there's 17 definitions, 17 listings for run. One of them is agreement. The second one, amount or quantity. And the third one is vessel or container. So what we have is agreement between the amount and the container. It's, yes, Dokai.
Don't mean to interrupt, but it's like a small group today. So can you tell me the three, I don't know this, are the three characters O, Ro, and Ki?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
And the first one was, what was the first one again? Amount?
Agreement.
Agreement.
Yeah. Shohaku Okamura translates it as something like recipient. I've seen proportional to, but when you look in the dictionary, it's really pretty solidly agreement or affirmation or yes.
Okay.
Or okay.
And what was role again? Or
that's amount or quantity.
okay, and then key is enough.
Is container.
Oh, container.
So it's agreement between the amount and the container.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I'm going with today. In Chinese, it's Yingling Qi. It's supposed to be a transliteration of actually Sanskrit, which is patra. And patra means just a vessel or bowl. So, and that even comes from Proto-Indo-European. So we have the two, we have Proto-Indo-European on the one side of the world that ended up as Sanskrit, and on the other side of the world that ended up as a variety of languages, but Latin. And so in PIE, they call it, P-I-E, Proto-Indo-European, it's petlum. So pe is to drink, and plum is a suffix that means a thing to do the verb with. So a drinking thing, which is kind of a really handy thing to have, right? A suffix. And then to Latin, it becomes poculo, which is just a vessel or a cup. And it even survives in Old Irish as öl, which is to drink. So if we take the Latin back around, what we have is we have a cup that's not half empty nor half full. Sorry, the glass is always, the glass is always, is the glass half full, half empty, or half full? No, it's Oryoki. It's just enough. The practice came from India. So begging bowls originally came from India to China, but in China there wasn't a tradition of begging, and so they did a lot of changes, and that's where you get the big monasteries and farming. And then you sort of need an efficient way to feed a lot of people in a meditation hall, and kind of Oryoki was born. It was 3 to 5 bowls. The Chinese, there's a famous, I wish I could remember where Zuiko said this came from, but she quotes somebody as having said something along the lines of like somebody questioning why the Chinese eat the way they do. And the person whose name I forget responds, "The Chinese do not eat with their hands." And so they added chopsticks and spoons. The Chinese kind of actually regarded the Indians as barbarians, which is actually one of the reasons initially Buddhism had a tough time in China, because it was like, what could these barbarians possibly be teaching us? And we get the wrapping cloths, cloths and all of that. I'm sorry, it was started in the Tang Dynasty. Subsequently, it goes to Japan through Dogen, like many things. And then obviously through our own teachers, Suzuki Roshi and Kagiri Roshi, and then it came to America. In one of those strange accidents of history, Shambhala practices Oryoki. So both Suzuki Roshi and Kobunchino Roshi were friends of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And he so much liked the practice that he had Kobunchino Roshi teach them how to do Oryoki. And I read it was in 1979 at the Shambhala Monastery. I guess that would have been in Colorado. They did, Kobunchino came and taught them how to do Oryoki. Transmission, being taught something from a qualified master is very important in the Tibetan tradition. They call it transmission. So, they take it as being like, here's a qualified master of Oryoki teaching us. And so they'd say the practice was transmitted to us through Kobunchino. Some people say that Oryoki actually influenced the tea ceremony, which seems plausible. In Japan, originally the tea ceremony basically started out as a boasting match. Like you would have all your friends and frenemies over, and the idea was to just show how many artifacts and trophies and armor and paintings and everything you had. And I forget his name, but there was a monk who was like, he was a tea master and a monk, and he was like, no, we're going to try something different. And the modern, the way that the tea ceremony is handed down to us today is changed. You have a small hut, you have a door that is small enough that everybody has to get down to crawl into the tea hut. You can't have your sword because your sword would catch on the door. Therefore, everybody in the tea room is equal, and everything's very much pared down. And Oryoki is like that. So the Shambhala centers, so they do Oryoki, but they changed the liturgy to be more Tibetan, Tibetanish, more aligned with them. I've heard, so liturgy is described as making the invisible visible. And I think that Oryoki definitely does that. So in Oryoki, we have a chance to see all of our dependence on each other sort of manifest. Innumerable labors, indeed, while we've been sitting all morning in the zendo, the tenzo, and the rest of the kitchen have been toiling away. Crises have been averted, and we were completely unaware of it, sometimes blissfully so. Sometimes crises aren't averted. If you consider runny, watery oatmeal to be a crisis, I don't. That is the proper state of oatmeal, is to be watery. While we're in the zendo prostrating our way through our ancient twisted karma, the Sokun servers have gone on ahead like scouts to get everything, start helping getting everything ready. And when we get to the eating hall, the Doan and Doshi have their roles, and we have a part to play as well. We're completing the 3 wheels of giver, receiver, and gift. And I don't know about you, but to me, and at least in Sesshin and Oryoki, everything tastes. Everything just tastes, like everything tastes like itself. I don't want to say it's tasty. It's just like the tastes are more pronounced. It's interesting, I think, that the secondary meaning of patra is the role in a play. an actor's role in a play, a vessel, right? So you can think of somebody as being a vessel for a character. So that's kind of cool too, in terms of our many meanings here. In the Shambhala materials, of course, they always talk about Oryoki as being, and you see it as well, as being shamatha, right? So it's a form of meditation. This is a common content about Oryoki. Meditation in motion, maybe Tai Chi for the tongue. Shambhala also talks about the Zen's knack for integrating the sacred and the profane. And of course, it's not really either, right? Oryoki is just Oryoki, life is just life. And so you might view Oryoki as a chance 3 times a day during sesshin to integrate practice on the cushion with practice off the cushion. Oryoki is often spoken of as an antidote to greed, right? So it's just the right amount. And stinginess, and we talk a lot about first greed. Maybe it's not so much stinginess, although you can think of maybe greed, stinginess as being greed from the other side. Instead of greed being, I don't have it and I want it, or I want more, it's I do have it and I want to keep it. At the very least, we can watch our appetites, right? I like this, I don't like this, I want more, I want less. Watermelon is vile. But I think there are sort of a deeper meaning here, at least a deeper possibility. And to elaborate on that, I'm gonna turn to my other friends, the Stoics. So I've talked about the Stoics before. Our almost Buddhist Greek and Roman ancestors in the old days. The purpose of philosophy was to identify the good life and how to live it. And the Stoics believed that the good life was a life of virtue. So to live a good life, we were virtuous. And the Stoics like lists too. So they had 4 virtues. They had courage. There's a lot of courage going on during Oryoki. You know, just think about people who have never done it before and they come to sesshin and they're trying to remember where everything goes. Maybe they had just gotten instruction. I remember the old days, not the old days, just the old days. At Great Sky Sessions on Saturday, Tonin would always give Oryoki instruction. And of course, you know, if you only do it once a year, and it had been, you know, just a few years, it's always good to get a reminder. And then, I mean, it's hard. And then you have people who are soku maybe for the first time, server for the first time, tenzo for the first time. So there's courage, there's perseverance, persistence, vigilance, staying the course. The second of the 4 is wisdom. So we can identify with that, right? In Buddhism, the power to see clearly how things are. For them, how things are is what's in my control and what's not in my control. And really the recognition that for the most part, what's in our control, maybe not even that, is how we respond to the current circumstance. And that's certainly, we find that in Oryoki as well. I remember during winter practice period, and I had never seen anybody get up in the middle of Oryoki and go to the bathroom. It's like, yep, okay, all right, yeah, that can, whatever happens, happens. There's an emphasis for the Stoics, though, in this response on action over words, and I mean that's true of Zen as well. The third virtue is justice. For the Stoics, justice, the highest justice was the common good and fairness. And so duty to our community. And I think that we find that in Oryoki as well. Sometimes we might be a little hungry. Nobody's ever died of starvation during session. You can always go back to the tenzo and say, was there anything left over? But you kind of look at the bowl sometimes and go, wow, there's 4 more people in line. Maybe I should do this instead of this. But probably the fourth virtue that's maybe a little bit more directly in line with Oryoki is temperance. So temperance for the Stoics was moderation, self-discipline, and restraint. So those were, and I think there's a depth to these things beyond just taking too much, and also possibly for Oryoki. In temperance, there's a lot of angles in terms of, there's just sort of the obvious that our pleasures can turn into our masters. That it's sometimes hard to get off the hedonic treadmill, and it's like, I want more and I want more, and off and self-restraint. But also for things I think that, you might consider to be virtuous, to like just give and give and give and give and give and give. But then you end up overcommitted. So one of the interesting things I like about probably Marcus Aurelius's writing the most is, but it was a thread throughout the Stoics, is that our most valuable resource is time. So one thing we can't get back. These are people who suffered, a lot of them, whose writings survive. They were summarily banished from Rome and lost all their wealth and sent out to the provinces multiple times, shipwrecks, all kinds of things. And you can get just about anything back except time. So I think there's an interesting dimension to that. There's a rhythm or cadence to Oryoki too, that's really as much pleasing as it is instructive. So how often do we find ourselves wishing for something to start, something to end? We just find ourselves hurrying through a task. Oryoki sort of has a pacing that's nice. It's good to surrender to. Yesterday I was in the garden. I have a bumper crop of green beans. I was like picking green beans, and there are so many. I'd be like, why are there still green beans here? I just picked through here. And so we're going, and I'm going, but I found I was getting irritated, like, because I had something else to do. I had another thing to do and another thing to do. And I just sort of realized, like, no, I'm just going to pick green beans right now. Like, that's just enough. I don't have to add anything to it. And it'll be fine. I have to go out in the garden again next weekend because the winged green beans are coming in. So I can pick more of them. Although I have to freeze a bunch of green beans today. So I think there's another dimension to that just enough, which is, what I'm doing right now. There's I don't know if it's a new thing, in the sort of productivity movement. Don't make to-do lists anymore. You make schedules. Like if you can't find a spot to put something you need to do on your calendar down to 15 minutes or half an hour, then it's not going to get done. Like if you don't make time for it. So, you should let the calendar guide you, not a bunch of to-do lists, at least for the coming week. Maybe you have to remind yourself of this. But it sort of feels like, okay, right now I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to move up with that. So there are a lot of teachings then sort of wrapped up in Oryoki. I think people are still, I was reminded the other day, so in Tibetan Buddhism, when they talk about things, there's always an outer, an inner, a secret, and an innermost secret layer to everything. So we start with the outer and the inner. And I don't know why this talk sort of felt like that, even though we don't really talk that way here in Zen. Oryoki is our natural state. We can take this bowl, this vessel of our lives as neither half full nor empty, it's just enough. We can take this as Buddha nature, as our practice enlightenment, as Dogen says. You know, we get instruction in the basic forms, how to open the bowls, set things out, we learn how to chant, servers come and we bow, they bow. There are gestures that allow us to come to some sort of agreement on an agreeable amount. I always have this weird thing in my head, like Oryoki means just enough, but there are seconds. I know there's seconds if it's just enough. So when you actually do it, this is where the rubber meets the road, right? And it all takes practice. You know, people can tell you how to do it, but you have to do it yourself and you have to get practice. Yeah, I still remember, so the funny thing, Tonin would always give us instruction on Oryoki. And of course, everybody would do what Tonin said. And it was never the way that Zuiko wanted it done. So the next day there would always be Zuiko as Inobe. Now, my teacher liked a very simple practice. I'm like, well, why do you have Tonin tell them year after year how to do it? But it was still good. I miss those days. I also miss eating the Zendo. I mean, I do really. It's nice to have the nice building in the halls, but I miss eating. I miss eating at the Zendo. So what Oryoki teaches us is that, you know, we can be taught, but we have to do it ourselves. And sometimes you have to just go with the flow of it, even if it doesn't come right away. Oryoki is sort of a microcosm of our practice. It's not just practice, but it's a microcosm of our practice in our lives, which are not different things. If we're distracted by our bowls, they're helter-skelter, we gobble our food, we take too much or too little, we forget we're a server. Or better yet, if you're a server and the other server gives you way more than you could possibly eat, that's still just enough, right? That's because that's what's happening. That's what's happening is just enough. So we're going to try again at lunch and dinner, maybe breakfast the next morning. And in this just enough, we see practice in our lives intertwined in our comings and goings, beginnings and ends. A monk asked you men, what are the teachings of a whole lifetime? And you men said an appropriate response, which looks like that's just enough. And a monk told Joshu, I have entered the monastery, please teach me. This is funny now. This is funny to me. Weird, because you're thinking like, okay, did they have Oryoki? And Joshu says, have you eaten your rice porridge? And the monk replied, I have eaten. And Joseph said, then you better wash your bowl. So, and that's just enough too. And that's just enough talk. So what are your great memories or bad memories, nightmares of Oryoki? Everybody is muted if you're talking.
I will begin. So I used to hate Oryoki when we did it at MZMC because of the bring in the benches. And by that time, your knees are hurting so much. So you'd be in such pain. And then there'd be then you'd have to be still sitting on the floor for Oryoki. So I used to not appreciate Oryoki at all. Really didn't like it. Plus the whole thing lasted longer because of the effort of bringing the benches in and the benches out. It meant an even longer situation. But to be a server at MZMC was kind of nice, because then you didn't eat with everyone else. You ate back in the kitchen in this really awkward and uncomfortable straight back kind of kitchen nook. And I was pretty young at that time, so I would be shoved into this kitchen nook with much more senior people that I could kind of gauge from something from. They were much more informal than I ever expected. So that was really interesting. And I have one little story that Michael O'Neill Genpo tells a lot. When he first started with Oryoki, he was a little Genpo really likes things precise, so he was feeling like he didn't quite know what to do. So he went to Norm Randolph and he said, "Can you show me how you do Oryoki?" And Norm Randolph was showing him how he did Oryoki. And Michael said, "Well, wait, that's not how that happens." And Norm said, "Oh, you asked me how I did it."
That is funny though, because like there are small things like you forget, and then everybody does something different at the end. And then normally I just say, well, I'm just going to watch what Dokai does. But you don't know if he's remembering to do all the things that he does. And so like, I don't know. It just is what it is. So to be fair, it was, I think 15-ish years ago plus now. My first grades guy, so that might color it, but I can tell you that sitting on the floor with robes is easier with the karama and everything is easier than sitting in a chair. So that might be why I like the eating in the zendo better. Sitting aside, I do agree. Like walking to the meal hall is a nice stretch.
Well, okay for me to speak?
Yeah.
Okay. I could probably go on for an hour about what the things, but I won't, of course. Kyoko's shaking her head. But let's see how short I can limit it to. Thank you for your talk. I appreciated just the knowledge. There were things I learned that I didn't know here. And including the translation of Oryoki. And right now, there's a retreat going on with MZMC here at Hokyoji, and they're doing a buffet style eating. And I've been, I've been in dialogue with several different people over many years about, Oryoki is so like out of touch, or something like that, of reality. And if we do it buffet style, then we're really learning how to just eat just the same as we do in our homes or something like that. That's sort of I think kind of a advocacy of buffet style eating. Yeah, I'm in your camp, Jushin. I think we learned so much more from doing the Oryoki style. It's just all those things you mentioned. I mean, I could go on and on about this. I mean, for Hokyoji, we're set up. It takes many, many props, to actually just do it. And very difficult to manage if you're going to like a conference place that doesn't have all these things. Where to go next? Okay, I read something by Dogen called the Fushu Hampo. regulations for eating. And I'll just say two things that I remember about it. Is one is you said, we Chinese don't eat with our fingers, but Dogen said, we here in Japan don't know the how to eat with our hands with finesse.
Oh.
So that's why we use chopsticks. So I thought that's a really nice way of putting it. And it also helps me here at Hokyoji because I say, maybe somebody doesn't know how to eat with chopsticks, Well, use your spoon then, and don't like hold up the whole group because you're trying to use your chopsticks to pick up a piece of yogurt, in your bowl. So just use your spoon. And then another teacher for me was Karl Kozinski, who had cerebral palsy. So, his hands would shake. And someone came, this time it was just like when we had 4 people for sesshin or 5 or 6. And someone asked, do you require us to use chopsticks, in their second and third bowl? That's kind of the general rule out of Japan. And Carl and I just looked at each other simultaneously, and we just both started laughing. It's like if I had required Carl to use chopsticks, we'd be there all day. He'd be going, and we just started laughing. And I said, no, we don't require that here at Hokyoji. So, and then the other thing in the Fu Shuku Hanpo was Dogen said, now if your neighbor who you're sitting next to has to get up and leave and do something for an errand, like meet a guest or something or whatever. So don't steal your neighbor's food.
That seems wise.
Yeah, it's like, okay. But, if we look a little more deeper into that, we realize that maybe they didn't get enough to eat all the time. It's like, why would you eat someone else's food? Well, for one thing, you don't feel like you're stealing it. It's like, well, they've gone away and they're not coming back, and this food is going to go to waste. So I might as well eat it. So, and then the neighbor, comes back like 30 minutes later, and where'd my food go? Something like that. So I don't know. It teaches you a lot. Sometimes these things that seem really just kind of boring I think it does. I don't know if, I think, and I don't like to talk about past experiences. I'm not prone to do that, but I've had some of my most kind of deepest experiences doing Oryoki. I don't know, hardly ever from Zazen that I'm aware of. It's usually when I kind of go out and I get up and I'm kind of, that's done with Zazen, now I can walk. And then something just sort of, the tension, I guess, of doing Zazen, where it just drops and something just kind of floods into me. And, I don't like to talk that way anymore because, you're just bringing up the past. But it's the same with Oryoki. Sometimes I know it so well that I can do it blindfolded, having done it for years and years. So that it's not a problem. The mechanics of doing it. And what it does, it's a teacher whenever I miss a little tiny beat, because I know how to do it. It's because my mind was wandering somewhere. So it's like an indication, you were dreaming about something. And what else? Just goes on and on. Oh, one time I'll share experience. One time I practiced, this was a few years ago, I practiced only taking what was given to me with the first scoop, the silver, whatever landed in my bowl. I didn't say, I just want a little bit. I didn't say, I want more. Whatever just happened to land. And sometimes in our first bowl for breakfast, if it's oatmeal or something, in the first scoop, you don't get too much. just a little spoonful, but I just practicing, that's it, and no seconds. And I did that like 2 or 3 times. And I was basically hungry, felt hungry most of the time. But, I wasn't starving by any means. And it was really invigorating. It just, having that little bit of hunger behind you just really kind of, I was sharp. I wasn't falling asleep and, that kind of thing. And I've tried to almost every single time now that we start a session, I kind of make a vow, do that again. Just, but I don't. And I notice some people never take seconds, and I can appreciate that. I don't know. There's other things, but I'll stop for a while and let. Okay. One more thing. Sometimes we moved into the Moss Hall or and started, or even here in my residence at the round table when we only had 6, 7 to 10 people. Because we didn't have younger people who could kneel down on the floor to serve us. So that was like a major reason. And and for me, the knees things, it's you said it doesn't hurt as much to sit on the floor as it does in a chair, but it's opposite for me. So if some of you read Peter Coyote's article in Lion's Roar that he wrote several years ago now, he goes into this torturous event that he was experiencing at Tassajara with Oryoki. He said, it just goes on and on and on. You say, when is this going to stop? But anyway, it was kind of funny. Okay, I'll stop for now. Maybe I'll come back. But I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say. Thank you for your indulgence.
Not at all. Aaron, did you have anything?
I I love this story. Actually, I'm going to keep it short just because I'm hoping Dokai will have share more experiences. But I love where he got. One thing I went through a period where I wouldn't take seconds just because I wasn't very good at it. And I thought, oh man, if I take seconds, then I'm going to be the last one, and everybody's going to be waiting. And I at some point, I think, as Jushin says, it is what it is, and maybe I'm past that. I'm not sure, but I did have a question though. You at the very beginning you mentioned it said that liturgy makes the invisible visible, and I was kind of struck by. I hadn't heard that before, and I was wondering if you'd tell me where it came from and maybe how.
I don't remember. I want to say Joan Halifax, Roshi, but I don't know that's true.
Okay.
Joku, do you know? You're muted.
I don't know where it comes from, but I also, Aaron, took that to heart because, well, you keep going with your questions and comments.
Oh, I'm done. I thought that was kind of striking, and I immediately, because we're talking about Oryoki, was kind of chewing on that. Just interested to hear if anyone had more information about that or an insight. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you for your talk. Really enjoyed that.
According to the internet, I might be channeling my Catholic past.
Okay, that is what it is.
It is what it is. I thought it was Joan Halifax, but maybe she got it from there. But yeah, all the hits are Catholic. I'm like,
Interesting.
Well, I have my one Karl Kaczynski and Oryoki story that was definitely something visible that made the invisible appear. And that was one morning for breakfast. He was a server. I think he was the head server, but in any case, he was serving. And in the process, his body decided to do what it felt like because it had cerebral palsy. and he went to serve the teacher. It might have been Dokai, and oatmeal went everywhere except the bowl. I mean, it was just a giant splat. And Carl got up like, okay, and just went about doing what he needed to do. It was so calm and beautiful. It was just part of having breakfast. And I think just about everybody there was completely captivated by the calm, matter of fact way that he went about it. It was such a beautiful talk, really, about equanimity and mindfulness. And I guess the other thing I kind of miss about Oryoki, when I went to Great Val, you had Oryoki bowls and you served it, but we didn't have servers. We would serve it going down the table. And I remember learning a great deal from a few people that I practiced with about the art of serving. And I also got to learn from, I think, Maizumi Roshi something about how you clean your chopsticks and then put them back into the envelope in a way that it really felt like a dance. It felt like a poem. So I have to say that I miss both servers and Oryoki meals. I remember sitting on the floor and just really feeling literally the length of time it took for other people to finish their meal. So it was like Tangaryo. It's like, really, I can't get up until everybody finishes. And so it was a great teacher in so many different ways. Thanks for talking about it. And like Dokai said, giving us some education on it. I think, Dokai, you should tell the story about seconds when you were in Japan.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't think of that one. But when I was in Japan, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it short for the purposes of this. For one thing, it was Urahatsu, and it was cold, and they didn't have any central heating. Cold means not like minus 20 or something. It means like 43 degrees. But boy, 43 degrees all day long, it's like that gets it, like the cold just starts going into your bones. The only time you ever get warm is the evening bath for about 5 minutes. But anyway, the main point here is that it was actually at Sojiji, one of the main training temples in Japan, sister to Eiheiji. And they ate so fast that I said, I had the sensation that I'm probably gonna tell this story somewhere. When things are happening, you don't really have the idea that it's going to turn into a story. But this one was so incredible that I thought, I'm going to check it out. So I put my watch right down next to my plate. And how fast are we eating? So the whole ceremony took like 45, 50 minutes. The eating part was 3 minutes, tops. I mean, that included seconds. Seconds came after 90 seconds, literally. So you had 90 seconds. And then 90 seconds later, seconds would come. And then 90 seconds after that, we started cleaning our bowls. And then, besides that is all ritual, bowing, chanting, blah, 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 all kinds of hitting the fish thing, all kinds of hitting the drum and serving food is a big, big production. And one other part of that story is, so the way I negotiated it was I ate everything in one bowl, everything in the next bowl, and everything in the third bowl. So I didn't have to put them down. That would save me a few seconds. And one of the person sitting next to me, a Japanese man, asked me, it's so interesting. You eat everything in one bowl, and then everything in the next bowl, and then everything in another bowl. It's that American custom. In Japan, usually we eat one thing here, and then there, and there. We go back and forth. And I said, well, I can eat faster. He said, eat faster. Eat faster. Eat faster. It's like, it didn't even register in his brain that we were eating fast. He couldn't cup. Eat faster. So, anyway. Where are we at with time?
We got 10 more minutes.
Oh, I can keep going for a little bit longer. So I think the speed thing, I'm the guiding teacher of Hokyoji, of course. So I'm always looking at how fast people are eating. And that's really a big deal when we're eating together. It's like the general admonition, I don't say this too often. Well, if you're finishing first, maybe slow down a little bit. If you're always, if it's consistent, maybe slow down. If you're always last, maybe speed up a little, So it's just sort of real general kind of admonition. But, we're eating as a group. And just like Kyoku said, if we're always waiting for some person to finish, you start to go, hurry up. So much stuff is going on with Oryoki. And I do remember this little story once where a group of us senior teachers, it was Byaken Regir, myself, Joan Snyder, and Joan and Michael O'Neill, at least it was those, and maybe one or two others. We were debating whether, that part where you finish your meals and then you're going to lick off your spoon or your chopsticks. We were debating, now how was it? Do we do the spoon first? Put it down, and then the chopsticks, or is the chopsticks first and put it down? We all agreed we're going to do the spoon first. They go below the chopsticks go, the chopsticks, I don't know, chopsticks first, right? And then you put your setsu tip, and whatever. We were debating the order because none of us could remember exactly. When two or three said, I think it was this way, then we just decided, okay, let's do it that way. So, it's things like that. I really appreciate your comment too. Liturgy makes the invisible visible. And I think that was a great story, Kyoku, you told about Carl. Too, and I remember it well. And I'm not sure if it was me or not, but I remember it happening. Related to that, here's another story. When I was a nurse, I was taking care of a patient with a young boy. He was about, I'm going to say between 12 and 14. And it was a time when Star Wars was first coming out. And he had cystic fibrosis, which means he gets into these coughs that are just like, ugh, it's like the worst cough we ever get, we have influenza or something. So anyway, but it happened to him all the time. So anyway, it was telling me this story, and then Darth Vader raised up his sword and then he goes into this cough. It goes on for like 30 seconds or so. And I just thought, are you okay? And that was what I was thinking. And then he finishes it and cut his head off. It's like there was no, it's just like Carl. It's like, okay, there's not too much thinking process. This just happened. Okay, how do we take care of it now? And with this guy, that was such part of his normal life. He couldn't actually just stop and go, oh, excuse me. Wait a second. So sorry. So it just went right through it. I was really impressed by that.
I want to tell one more Carl story.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Because when he was Tenzo at Clouds and Water, he and my ex-husband Jim were co-Tenzos together. And I forget what I was, but in any case, I got the message, breakfast might be a little bit late. And the two of them were making a orange smoothie. You know, they put orange juice and smoothie together. And apparently the delay was caused because Carl, when he hit the button on the blender, the lid was not sufficiently tight. So basically the entire smoothie ended up on the ceiling. And I never saw such a broad smile in my life. I mean, Carl had this wonderful smile, and you just had to go, well, I guess you'll just have to make another smoothie. I thought, well, I'll never feel bad again as it tends after that. So he taught in so many different ways. But we've got a couple more minutes and then we'll finish up with our usual, you know, here's what's coming up next week kind of stuff. But if you've got a couple more stories, please tell them.
I have a disaster story. I love Oryoki now in the Moss Hall, and there's lots of stories from the kitchen about seconds and how just wonderful it is when Dokai gets to finish off the last of the seconds as the guiding teacher, the last one to be served, and there's just enough for Dokai to agree to take the last. But when I got back into practice at Hokyoji, I was going to just about every retreat I could, and I went with Clouds and Water. And the first day, the person who was assigned to be Soku didn't want to be Soku because they felt they weren't experienced enough. And somehow I was chosen when I hadn't been doing this for a long, long time. And then it was a big group. It was like 25, 27 people the first 3 or 4 days of Clouds. So there were a lot of tables. And then there were 4 servers, none of who had ever served before. Mm. So I couldn't remember exactly how to do things. And Kyoku wasn't around so that we could, you know, make the schedule, make the list of order of things to do. So things did not go very well. So the first thing that went badly was the servers didn't know quite what to do. So they would come up and I would hand them the bowl to serve and they would bow to me. Well, when they bow to me, I bow back. So there's like, okay, we're bowing. This is taking a long time. And then I would tell people the traffic pattern, assign each of them a traffic pattern to go. And it's like, they didn't listen at all. It was like chaos. It's like, it would work kind of for the first serve, but the second serve, people would go all over the place. And it was just very, very messy. And then to top it off, the person who was going to be Soku decided to give me notes. All the things that
That's funny.
So it takes even with people who've done it for a while, the second or third day, things really get to be very, very beautiful. And it's like it's a manifestation. It is the invisible becoming visible in the manifestation of the Zazen. So and working as a unit. I mean, even the timing of everything, of how long everybody takes to eat, becomes more and more cohesive as time goes on. So
I'll just add to that. I think what it shows too is really working together as a team. Everybody, the kitchen crew, the serving crew, the people who are eating, you just see we're all just paying attention to each other. Every small little move we're watching. Oh, did they serve that person? like first, and we don't criticize. We just kind of watching and trying to keep adapting. So yeah, I think it's beautiful. And we're at the end of our time, but I do want to talk to you privately, Jushin, about this. Nobody does to-do lists anymore. Are you kidding?
To-do lists are so
We
2021.
only do schedules? Well, jeepers creepers, I guess I'm out of touch, but maybe that's why I don't get things done. Much as I'd like to. Okay. I'm
The
done.
new to-do list, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
the never-ending to-do list.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Jushin. Obviously, we've had a lot of fun, both in learning from you and telling each other stories. So thanks for bringing us together in that beautiful way this morning. As you all know and respond to, we definitely depend on all of our fans. So please, if you wish to make a dana offering, you will find the link to do that in the chat box. And we'll close with the 4 vows. Oh, actually, just a real quick run through of the upcoming events. So in October, we have the Land Care Weekend and the wonderful men's retreat repeating with both Mark Anderson and Bob Ziglovich. If you didn't get a chance to partake of that, I'd have to tell you that the energy of that retreat, which I got to cook at last year, was just absolutely, I thought my chest was going to blow out. It was so warm-hearted. It was very meaningful. In November, we have a just sitting retreat again with Lee Lewis, and anybody that likes a different style of doing zazen and sesshin, a work weekend, and a guest coming back with a healing retreat, which involves Tai Chi and yoga. And then, of course, in December, we have Rohatsu. The theme is going to be, let me think.
Buddha life.
No, it's like your life is the Buddha. We're going to be, the topic is really the life of the Buddha. And Mi'o and I will make a comeback offering. So we'd love to have you with us. Having said that, let's get ready for our vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible.